Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos recently said meaningful education in America should include the message of God. But many college students today seem to be mostly concerned about rising tuition costs. The Wall Street Journal reports the average annual tuition for a four-year public college or university is now almost $6,600. That's up from about $4,800 in 2008. Some people argue college is now just a waste of time and money. Joining us with more is Bryan Caplan. He's a professor of economics at George Mason University, author of the new book, The Case Against Education: Why the Education System is a Waste of Time and Money. So, Mr. Caplan, in your opinion, why is college a waste of time and money?
Well, I notice I say the education system is a waste rather than the education itself. This is an important distinction because I say there's a big difference between what education does for the individual, which is get them more money and better jobs, versus what it does for society, where I say it mostly is just a way for people to spend time learning a bunch of subjects they're never going to use again. And again, really the heart of my book is to try to understand how can it be that employers care so much about your grades and performance in classes that you're never going to use again. And my answer is that a lot of what school does is it's a way to jump through hoops to impress employers. So basically you get certification, you get stamps on your forehead saying grade A worker. And again, this is something where for one individual it pays very nicely. But if everyone gets a bunch of stamps on your forehead, this doesn't mean everyone can get a good job. It means that you need even more stamps to be considered worthy of an interview. Once you buy the idea that a lot of education is nothing that you're going to use again in the real world, and rather that you just need to do it in order to look better than other people. And as I say in the book, a lot of what's happened in recent decades has been severe credential inflation, which means that you need more education to get the very same job that your parents or grandparents had. Once you buy that idea, then it's natural to think, well, what could we do to cause credential deflation, to reduce the amount of education that you need to become a secretary or a waiter at a nice restaurant or whatever? And what I say there is, the obvious approach is to try to reduce the amount of education that people have, to spend less time encouraging people to get more school, and instead try to tip the scales back and say, taxpayers don't want to fund people to study subjects that they're never actually going to use again in the real world. So, educational austerity is basically just saying that we're going to try to reduce the amount of education that we have. We're going to reduce government support. And if you think of education as teaching useful skills, this is scary. But if you think of it as mainly just leading to a lot of wasteful jumping through hoops, then it's a way of getting the number of hoops you have to jump through down back to a reasonable level. And then similarly for vocational education, I say that it just makes a lot of sense to redirect education towards actual practical job training. And again, not waiting until college to do it, but when kids are in high school or middle school, why not go and at least expose them to a bunch of viable occupations and provide them training for those, rather than making everyone study a foreign language they're never going to use, to learn Latin or French. Why not go, instead of making them learn trigonometry, at least give them the option of, we can learn about plumbing or learn to be an electrician.
What about income? Now, people with vocational training certainly earn less than those with college degrees, do they not?
Well, it does vary by the actual job. So if you're comparing plumbers to to people with English degrees, then I'd say the plumbers are doing great by comparison. But on average, it's true that people who have more education do make more money. Again, and sort of the heart of my book is to say why, right? Is it because they learn useful skills, in which case the critique really has a lot of teeth? On the other hand, is it because you've just jumped through more hoops than other people? In that case, I would say, well, for an individual, it might make a lot of sense to go and spend a lot of years in school, but it doesn't make a lot of sense for society to do it because, again, my story is the more education that other people have, the more you need to not have your application thrown away by employers before they even interview you. Meaning, it is very striking, how even jobs that you would think of as non-college jobs, like being a waiter in a nice restaurant or a concierge at a hotel. These are jobs where in 1950 virtually no one with these jobs would have had a college degree, and now it's very common, right? And I say the reason is that the more education people have, the more you need to impress employers, even if the education has nothing to do with the jobs. Educational expectations have risen up to an absurdly high level. And again, from the point of view of employers, this is not stupid, because when the college degrees are abundant, it makes sense to say, well, fine, we'll say that we are only going to interview if you have a college degree. But it's not the kind of thing that makes sense for taxpayers to encourage.
And a lot of students, once they graduate, I mean, they just have mounds and mounds of student loan debt. There's almost like a second mortgage on a house or something. It takes them forever to get through that. So finally, what do you think about the idea of free college tuition? Now, that idea won Bernie Sanders a lot of young supporters in his presidential campaign.
Yeah, so I think this is a terrible idea. But I agree that this would probably lead to a large increase in college enrollments and maybe even college graduation. But it would just amplify this problem we're already having of needing a college degree to get even a halfway decent job. And I say, it's time for us to look down at our feet and realize we're not getting very far with the spending that we're doing, and instead try to figure out a way to let people get decent jobs when they're 18 instead of waiting until they're 22 or 25 or 30.